own shit. Probably why it takes so much time to put out an album. Man, I'm always behind schedule. Ain't that I ain't hungry, I just always got my plate full. Try to digest all the topics that I'm spitting. You need to sit back and actually take the time to listen. We living in a new age where mind states are feeble. Kids' attention spans are shorter than Danny DeVito. My beats though, be banging, be about my business. Bass stays knocking like a Jehovah Witness. Leave them scattering with cheddar in the gang of rhyme patterns. I ain't worth challenging. You all need some aspirin. Aspiring to be me, no empires to feed. Just a chosen few that's flowing through. Firing up the weed. Jesus, crazy what the world coming to. I'm here to live it, make music. For y'all is just hanging on a gimmick, huh? Wait a minute, man. Don't get me confused with none of these newbie ass rappers, man. I know the game be feeling fucked up. But I've been making beats since 95, regardless if I had the right promotion or not. Word up. Hey yo, I ain't always humble, I ain't always intense. I've had my good and bad days like anyone else, more or less. Probably a lot more than less, sort of more of it in a sense. Feel blessed, so I just move forward through the stress. But don't smoke stress, smoke the bombest weed you ever seen. Cannabis club category, certified Cali green. Type of bomb that I keep up in my sack. They give a lot of cats anxiety attacks, there's no denying the facts. But enough about the weed though, I keep it on a need to know basis. It's time for me to cut to the chase quick. So download the free LP, spread it to your friends and family, even to the little haters mad at me. I got 2 official LPs coming after these.
What's going on, folks? Welcome. Happy Thursday. Welcome to Wartime Optimism number 30-something or another. I have music playing before I even showed up on here, which is hopefully not too loud. I don't know. I'm trying a new thing. I'm still trying to figure out what music to put on there. Because it's all like the epidemic stuff, which I'm allowed to play apparently. I don't know. It's a 30-day free trial. We're going to try mixing it up a little bit from all sinuous tunes. And we'll see if I can find some cool stuff. Let me know how it sounds on your end. Can you hear me? Can you hear the music? Let me know. I hope everyone is doing well. Cheers to everyone. I think we're going to have a fun day. I don't have to draw anything. Which is like a little break, because we're going to look at a time lapse of painting the last image. Music sounds good. We got lots of people in the chat. Good to see you all. Daniel, Luis, Vlad, Oleg, Sarkot, Claudio, Milan. Guys, I don't know which one of you guys like this before it even starts, but it always makes me smile before getting started that there's a couple likes on there. You guys are awesome. Thank you. I hope everyone's doing well. It sounds like you're doing well. Let's look at some art, shall we? We got the image that we started yesterday, which now looks like this, and I'm pretty happy with how it came out. Drew on it for a little over an hour 15, hour 20, something like that. Not entirely sure. And it was a lot of fun, and I think my gut of how we started yesterday, which is that I needed to make sure that I still had a direction when I started. I'm going to use quote painting when I'm talking about like actually trying to finish something by painting as opposed to painting over. I think that was kind of the missing thing. We're going to talk about that a little bit while we're watching the time lapse. But for anybody who missed yesterday, let's do a quick recap of that and get this microphone a little bit out of my face. We started with this rendering, and we did 2 like quick. I don't think we spent more than like 5-10 minutes on each one. Just like mock-ups of ideas or directions of how to take this. So the first part was like, it was painting in the sense that I was drawing stuff and dropping in skies, but it was more paint over than like trying to execute. And separating those in my brain is I think the biggest thing that I've learned in the past couple of days. So the first one I did, changed the composition a little bit, dropped in this guy, liked this kind of general idea. Obviously, you guys already know that this is where I ended up with. But just to kind of reinforce the idea of the first step when painting is to make sure you're locked in on an idea or a direction. We also did this kind of green toxic, sickly one, which I think I still want to do an image. I'm not going to just do this one in 2 variations, but I think I want to do something that's toxic-y. I feel like it'd be a fun challenge. But ultimately we went with the dusk option, and from there, this is where it was when we left yesterday after, like 5 or 10 minutes of extra painting, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. Terrible with time. This guy, terrible with time. And then this was kind of the main steps of what I did painting. I did that last night. And then this morning, I just cleaned up a couple of things that I noticed after I had saved it and thought I was done. David, good to see you, man. Happy to have you here. So let's pull up the painting process. And let's find the proper screen for this, which is that one. And I shortened this down to like 19 minutes. I'm still trying to figure out how much to speed things up. It feels like this was like I said, like an hour and 15 roughly of painting. It feels like I need to speed it up by at least 3 times for it not to get too boring, I think, for us all. Which says something about when I do these live. But I appreciate you guys sticking with me. I hope you enjoy it. Edmundus, very good to see you. I have no idea how to pronounce that name. Edmundus? I don't know how to pronounce your name, and that seems like a name that I should be able to pronounce, so I apologize for that, but thank you for being here. So yeah, let's get this started. And we the first step I do is I go into like a detail and start just kind of doodling. I feel like that's not the most important thing for me to fix, but I feel like it's a good way to kind of get the brain synced in and starting to work properly, and kind of start to get yourself into like a focus state. So we start making some big changes to the sky, I think, next. I don't know. This will be as much of a surprise to me as it is to you guys as far as how I go through and actually go through these things, because I don't remember. Excuse me. Michaela, what's going on? Good to see you here, darling. Thank you for being here. I'm having a blast with these. I feel like, so the thing that I'm kind of realizing or starting to realize or starting to learn slowly is, I think because historically I've only ever used painting, in quotes, to go through and edit the idea of an image, whether that's a paint over, a rough sketch, or whatever else. It was always like a generative tool for trying to figure out a composition problem. Sometimes I do go in and do it rough, just to like figure out potential different lighting scenarios or composition or whatever it might be. But I always use it as a tool that then I go back to 3D, make those changes, and then post-production for me is always finishing. And finishing to me is like, okay, the image is kind of set in stone and now you're just making it beautiful and come alive and all of that. And because that dichotomies always exist, I think in the past couple of days when I was going into painting with the goal of making it into a finished piece, my brain went straight into like that post-production mode, and I lost the, okay, we can still change things in the paint overlay way. Which seems like a little thing, and it's really just like a small little switch of mentally like how I'm approaching it, but it's a big one because it keeps me looser and not constrained to the rendering, which I think I was in both of the last ones that I've attempted to do this way. And I think that the thing that I'm really taking away is that it's such a small thing, but such an important thing, I think. At least for me, this specific thing's important for me, quite obviously, but it's a very, very small thing, and it completely changes the way that I work in post here. Post kind of being everything, I guess. Now we're gonna need to start defining some more terms. But I think that the lesson that I'm gonna try to keep in my mind on top of the specific ones is to be as incredibly like self-aware of the way that I'm thinking when I'm working, especially as I'm like experimenting with some of these different methods, which, you know, are a lot of fun, and I do very much want to continue improving at. I think I need to be aware of like the prejudices isn't the right way, but kind of like the set ways of working that I'm accustomed to, right? I've kind of been working in a slow evolution of the same process for 10 years, right, in 3D. And there's a lot of things I think that I naturally do that I'm not aware that I'm doing. And so this is just reminding me to keep myself as overly self-aware as possible, so that I don't, keep doing a thing just because it's how I've done it in the past when it might not be the best method. So yeah, bringing a little bit of variation back into the building. Just a second ago, I think I do a good job this time of kind of working all across the image. I don't think I get really buttoned down into just one area trying to make it right. I will zoom in to fix things, obviously, but I don't think I stay anywhere too long. We'll see. I think that's definitely one of the keys, and continuing to like work the entire piece as opposed to just trying to get one little section to work well. So kind of jumping around the canvas, I think, is a good way to keep your eyes moving around, and obviously I flip this quite a bit back and forth. So yeah, so that was my little, I think epiphany might be a strong word, but a little bit of insight I've gotten out of the past 2 days that I'm excited to continue testing. Obviously everything's kind of a work in progress for like this workflow. So we'll keep going. And you can see one of the last little changes I made was right here. I like the line that these clouds are currently making. And at some point I put in, a line down towards this like sunset area, and I'm wondering now when I do that, because then I ultimately take it away, but it's like the last thing I do. Luca, what's going on, my friend? Good to see you. Thank you for being here. So yeah, and I'm also getting more confidence in like quote unquote brushwork, I think, and starting to kind of figure out how to use the brushes that I'm currently fiddling with to get the effect that I'm trying to get. And I think that confidence, like it's the same with drawing, right? Is that if you like read any how-to draw books, like having confidence in your line is super duper important. There's where that line came in, and it stays all the way until almost the end. Yeah, so like the confidence in your ability to make like a line greatly affects how that line ends up looking, the mindset with which you do it. The same is true for painting, and I don't really know what I'm doing at all here. I'm still figuring it out. But I feel like certain things are starting to click in the sense that when I expect a brush or a brush stroke or a specific mark to have a effect, whether that's actually literally visually how I expect it to look once I put it down, or how I expect it to affect the overall feel of something, I feel like I'm starting to get to a point where my expectation and what actually happens is lining up more than it used to, which is always a good sign, because in any tool, whether it's a 3D tool, a new piece of software, whatever else, your ability to predict the effect of any particular action is like a direct indicator, at least for me, of how well I actually understand and can control that software. Oh, it's a great time to tell me that you don't see the video. Thank you, Milan. Let's see. I'll pause it and see if I can do a little troubleshooting. Do you see me and not the video itself? Or do you see nothing? Let's see if I can figure it out. Let's see what happens if I go to my channel and have a look-sees. And we'll see if we can get it figured out. I appreciate you pointing it out for me. We will find out here in a moment. Now I'm just shaking my head to see if that updates. Okay, so I'm seeing it. So you might need to, we see you in Photoshop. Oh, wow. That's a terrible time to tell me that you don't see the video. This has been going on for like a couple of minutes, like 6 or 7 minutes. Okay. We can get this figured out though. Let's see. And let's close that window. Okay. Now I hope you guys see the video. Luca, small victories is all we got, buddy. All we got. I can see that all of you have the same kind of mindset as me, which is that your first assumption is that you could have done something better, that is something on your end. I do the same exact thing. And I think maybe in this... Milan, if you hadn't said anything, we would have gotten to the total end of this one. Been like, okay, guys, that was it. Later. Talk to you guys later. So just apply everything I just said for the last 5 minutes to what's happening now. I will try and be more mindful of what is actually playing through OBS one way or another. But yeah, I do think that it's a good thing to be self-critical in general, and I think one of the ways that presents itself, which is that like when I'm working with a client on a project, even if something happens that's I don't think is my fault because they are asking for a stupid change, or they're changing their mind about whatever it might be. Some clients are not great to work with, and that's just part of the business, and some of them are great. But even the ones that I think, I could say it's their fault that something didn't go the way that we were all hoping it to, I still first think to myself, but what could I have done so that wouldn't have happened, right? Even if it wasn't my fault. And, there's a great quote. Let me see if I can find it. There's a podcast that I really, really enjoy called The Knowledge Podcast. Or the Knowledge Project podcast. And I really, really like it. And there was a quote that he said, the host is named Shane Parrish. It's all over the place, but it's always super duper interesting. And there's a quote, I forget what the context is of the quote, but I did write it down, is that it may not be your fault, but it's your responsibility to do something about it. And I feel that way about pretty much every aspect of my life, as like a mental outlook, when things aren't going the way I would like them to go, personally, professionally, growth-wise. I think it's a good way to go. But I think in the future, if it seems like I've made a giant streaming error of some sort, like forgetting to show you the video that I'm talking about, I think we can assume that is probably my lack of ability to do this. And you guys should feel free to kind of go right at it and let me know right away. I think that my ineptitude when it comes to social media streaming things should not be underestimated. Should not be overestimated. The assumption should be that I don't know what I'm doing. That should be the starting point when you guys think about it. I'm watching this now for the second time, but we're about caught up. We're getting there. Yes, Milan, very much appreciated. Thank you. And Michaela, assholes. Yep. I have found, the first couple of years of my career, I spent a lot more time focusing on client management and how I dealt with clients, both from a process standpoint, but also in how I spoke to them, how I presented myself, how I presented my work. And what I have found for the vast majority of clients, left to their own devices, they will ask for stupid things and not respect your process or your time or anything else. Most of them are that way unless you are managing them well. And I have found, at least through the process that I found that works for me, both in how I present work, how I work through the work, and how I present it to them when I show it to them, that some proactive measures on your behalf will greatly, greatly reduce kind of that tension of, oh, do you know how much time it's going to take for me just to turn that chair 2 degrees? That's a waste of my time. It's not going to affect the image. Why would you ever ask for it? Maybe I'd probably have to do a little preparation. Most of the talks that I've been asked to give at things like the D2 and ASAI and stuff like that have been on client management process, kind of the business side of providing a creative service. It's a really, really tough thing, and I don't think it's something that a lot of that there's a lot of really good kind of reference for. So maybe we'll do that in a future episode. Not one that I could just like start tomorrow and do well, unless I gave one of my actual talks, but then I would have to pull up. We'll figure something out. We'll talk about that in the future if you guys would be interested, in kind of my take on client management, client relationships, avoiding changes, and having your clients be happier. We could definitely do an episode about that. So we will do that. Lewis, you get I hear that all of the time. Or Luis. I'm gonna guess it's Luis because there's no O in there. You absolutely get that. Like, we absolutely love this image. Just change this one thing that will undo the thing that they like, essentially. And one of the things there is that what they're asking for, it's because they want something changed, right? And to not go like really deep dive into client management in this one, a lot of times, especially if you're submitting your images just like via PDF, saying like, here, have a look, here's where they're at, let us know what you think. That's a really hard way to present your work, because you're really at that point not presenting your work. You're saying, here, look at this and come back to me. If you're presenting it in person, which is what I try to do whenever possible, even if it means taking a trip down to New York City, when it's not possible, because it would mean flying too far for a meeting that's not important enough, I do still do it via live stream. I'll send them the PDF a couple of minutes before the actual meeting, because I don't want them looking. I want to control the narrative of how they see the image and how they talk about the image, and if not control it, at least be present for the initial reactions. But generally speaking, if you're looking at it live and they start asking for things that you know is going to undo the thing that they like, you can explain it to them carefully and respectfully, and not have to make the change, right? I'd say of changes that are randomly suggested during one of these meetings, I'd say I probably only end up making at the end 40% or so, but it's not just because I choose not to make them, it's because they asked for something and I want to make sure that they understand the implications of, okay, if we're going to make the sky a deeper, darker blue for an interior image, the overall image is going to have to be toned down in overall value, otherwise the sky and the interior don't match, and blah, 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 blah. Do you guys like the way that the light works in this image? Yes, you do. Changing that will change the entire scene. Are you sure you want to do that? Etc., etc. We'll talk more about that. I've not talked about it for a while, so let me think about it. I've got a decent amount of work coming up that I know is going to be kind of like late nights, early mornings type stuff over the next 9 days or so. So I doubt that I'll put anything together and prepare something in that time, but I'll start queuing up in my head a good way to talk about it, and then maybe after this one particular project is done, we'll do that. It's a client I really enjoy working with, but one that let's say there will be change orders. There are always change orders. Luis, I'm not sure what you mean. I reach with questions. Let me know. It might be a reach with questions. Oh, if you guys have specific questions, yes. Either in the chat. If it's about something that we're looking at right now, throw it in the chat. If it's something else, either send it to me via DM or leave it in the comment in a more permanent and easy way to find it. It would be much appreciated. So what do we got going on? Let's catch back up with where I don't think I've done anything mind-blowing. You did see me go in and like edit like some little details of the silhouette. Those types of details tend to read from a far distance away. So those types of details I feel like are always worth it, regardless of whether you're painting or not. But here, there's a couple of scripts that I have that you can see, or actions, scripts, whatever you want to call them, that just go through like a set of finishing things that I did when I was doing a lot of product images for Kit Bash, You know, a lot of times I'd have 20 images that I wasn't going to edit each one in post, but I would do like a color grade and, you know, like a few different adjustments and adjustments to that I wanted to apply to all of them. And so I just do it as an action so that I could batch all of them at once. And a lot of time, and I still have them, and I still, each now and again, I'm like, I bet this would look cool. And I sometimes run it just to see what I get. So that's what you guys saw a second ago. And I deleted it. I didn't like how it looked. Knitting, I'm not going to call this specifically a practice to figure out colors. As far as like, okay, well, a clarification question. Do you mean painting in general, or running like little old post-production actions that I've done before? Let me know, and I'll answer. But they're two different answers, I think. I'm not entirely sure. Excuse me. Painting in general. So, yeah, so I wouldn't call this a specific... If I wanted to like just practice colors and pick colors better, I would do like little thumbnails of paintings. Have paintings on one screen so that I can't actually pick them, and then try to pick them and paint little thumbnails as a means to practice identifying, linking what I'm seeing to where that would live on a color picker or a color wheel. But yes, painting in general is like one of the things that I'm trying to get better at, is not only painting but understanding color from a painter's perspective as opposed to a rendering perspective. And I think that like a rendering perspective is very similar to like a photographer's perspective, which is to say, how do you adjust colors to get them into a grade or a look that you like? And I think it's more significant than it seems difference. At least it is for me. When it comes to like, I want this color, right? If you were to take this painting and just paint a swath of pure gray across it, that gray would look, I'm gonna guess, this has got both warm and cool. I'm gonna guess that it would actually come out a little bit green in this image. That'll be a guess. But typically speaking, in most images, a gray has a perceived color based off of its context. If you paint something that's all orange and throw gray on it, it will come out feeling kind of blue or cool. And if you have an image that's entirely blue, it will come out warm, orangish. And so what we think we see as color, if you go and you look at some of your favorite photographers or painters or whatever else, a lot of times when you sample, like really zoom in and sample colors, the color that you think you're seeing is not the actual color that's present. And I don't have much experience. I haven't painted with like traditional media in 20 years, since I was young and in high school. And so I very much kind of like lost that ability, and I am wanting to get it back. So this is kind of, these painting exercises are not as focused as like a lot of like my daily practices, because we're making an entire image as opposed to practicing a singular thing. But they are, I'm trying to work on my like painting ability and confidence, my ability to like work in this process, this workflow, which is new to me, not new in general, but new to me. And so it's working on that. And then if this was in black and white, I would feel much more comfortable working than in color. And so if you have ever seen me post anything that was painted, it was probably in black and white, because I do like black and white, but also it's simpler just having to deal with value and not having to worry about hue or saturation. How do you flip the image and respond so fast to the action? When I work with several layers, it takes some time. Well, sometimes like at this point, we're watching this like sped up roughly 3.5 times. And as a file gets bigger and bigger and bigger, flipping the canvas does take a while. For these paintings, even though there's a lot of layers in this, the layers are pretty light. A lot of them just have a couple of marks on them. I have it assigned to a shortcut. For me, I have F11 assigned to flip canvas horizontally, and I have F12 set to flip layer horizontally. So particularly if it's like a big 16-bit like professional project that has tons of layers and all kinds of things happening, and it gets like laboriously slow to wait for it to flip the entire thing, I'll just do Command Alt Shift E to copy merged into a new layer, and I'll just flip that one layer. So it's very quick. So I can't work in that way because obviously the layers beneath it haven't been flipped, but I can quickly get at least the feedback that I need. Oh, Nuno, that is incredibly flattering. Thank you. I haven't really thought about it, with the exception of one. I think of my followers on Instagram, I think, is where he contacted me. Wanted the farm thing that I painted to print, and so I'm looking into it. At least, it looks like with ArtStation I can just upload a high resolution file and they kind of handle all of the rest. I don't know the quality of them, so I might get myself a couple to check before I actually put anything there. But you're the second person to ask that, and I find it incredibly flattering. So thank you for that, Nuno, very, very much. But yeah, I was basically just trying to figure it out because one guy wanted to have it on his wall, and I think that that's a wonderful thing. So let me continue to look into it. Thank you for asking, and thank you for the implicit compliment in that. That's huge. Does Thomas sell his on ArtStation? Because then I could check the quality of the ArtStation stuff and have some Thomas Dubois in my house, because that would be amazing. Yes, I'm going to check. I'm really hoping that he sells his on ArtStation, because that looks like a kind of... I'm looking for a solution that's very low hassle and time intensive for me. I'm actually going to Google that. I try not to do this while I'm talking to you guys, but I'm actually going to Google it because now I'm very, very intrigued. Ooh. Isn't selling posters. Store. Oh, he doesn't sell any of his, I think, on ArtStation. Where does he sell it then? And has he found an easy way to sell them? Because I know if I take anything that I might pause. I'm going to pause this for a second, because I do want to talk about what I'm doing right now. I'm going to go back just a smidge, and we're going to watch these last 4 minutes, and I'm actually going to pay attention to them because I have something to say about this. Where is it? Not here. It's after that. Right there. My only so I have basically two things that I would want if I was ever going to say that, hey, you can buy any of these prints. One is that I would want the quality to be good, because I would just feel bad if someone spent money because they want some of my sketch artwork in their home and it came out and it wasn't looking good. That would bum me out. But two, I also know that I'm about as busy as I can be, and if it's anything that's a lot more than me just uploading some high resolution TIFFs, I probably won't do it, or at least I won't be on time with things. So I'm looking for low hassle, high quality. And Nuno, if you find out where it is, please let me know. Please let me know. Okay, so right now you guys can see we have some notes on this. And Michaela, I enjoyed your blog post on the Kitbash 3D Stories page about your winning entry from the Apocalypse competition. I think the Apocalypse competition. It was a beautiful image, and I liked it. And I saw that you do this on all of your images when you start and post, which I think you said you learned from Jama. I don't do that, but this is basically the end of last night. I kind of took it, I saved it, I looked at it on my phone, right, to see it on a different screen. I think that always gives good perspective. And there's a couple of things that kind of as soon as I saw it on my phone, I'm like, I could tweak these few things. But I wasn't going to open Photoshop back up. It was time for me to go to bed. And so I just left notes to myself. which is something that I will commonly do. The reason that I leave notes for myself is that it means that when I sit down to fix these changes, I have an immediate thing. I'm like, okay, I want to clean this up because it's muddy. I want to soften that line that's coming down in the clouds. I don't like that. The image as a whole looked a little bit dark, and there was like this kind of smudgy spot. And so this way, when I sat down, I immediately had things to work on. I didn't have to like get my brain back to where it was before. And I do that the same a lot of times when I'm working on bigger projects that are multiple days, is I always try to stop at a point where I know the next thing that I want to do. So that when I stop down, that time of getting back into the rhythm of it is super quick. If you go until you get to the point where it's like, I'm not sure if this is all working, but I don't know what to do next. If you stop there, then when you get back, you have to do a lot of work. So I always try to stop knowing the exact next thing that it needs to get done, assuming I'm not almost done, and then I usually just finish. But if there's going to be like another day of work on something, and this is true for 3D as well, I try to stop when there's an immediate thing to do next. And that way, getting back into that rhythm, super easy. So this is an important little frame here. And we can see I zoom right in and I start working on it. I bring back this mask from before because I want to paint the clouds behind it, but I don't want to have to repaint the building. And I don't have any clean selections for it. So this is clean enough. You can kind of see this like muddiness that, just developed over time, probably from bad layer management, basically. So just cleaning up the silhouette so that it stands nice and proud and without the weird little smudge on top of it. This last little bit took like, 10 minutes, I think, something like that. Not on art. Oh, do we have there? I already saw it. Nuno, if there's any specific ones that you want, I can literally put them up there, assuming that it's at a resolution that's printable. If there's one that you would want, I'm flattered that you would want it, and I'd be happy to put it up for you. Shoot me a DM, Facebook, Instagram, whatever's easiest, and I will see what I can do. Did you find out where he sells his pieces of art? Because that is the big mystery in this whole thing. I'm bringing back some midtones into this middle piece, this right foreground element. Which visually pushes it, I think, a little bit further back into, so that we have the left foreground closest, right foreground second, then the building, then the background, right? And like the overall values of how dark things get tend to place those visually, on top of obviously like overlap and perspective. And then I just kind of liven up this little dead area inside the water that doesn't really bother me in Photoshop, but on my phone, for whatever reason, that screen really didn't work. Nitin, thank you very much. That's incredibly flattering. Thank you. This type of Photoshop, I'm not entirely sure how to describe this type of Photoshop because I have 10 years of experience of editing renderings in Photoshop. So I know Photoshop very, very well. Painting, on the other hand, is, I'm just learning. In yesterday's video, I put a bunch of links in the description of the video of YouTube painters that I really like. So digital painters that talk a lot about the painting side of things. Oops. Let's do a little switch back to something normal so that we're not staring at a white screen that thing's like blinding. That on top of the light, too much. Oh yeah, see, this is where I was looking. Thomas Dubois, the man. So we can look at this for a minute. As far as Photoshop editing as a whole, well, I will be doing some post-production stuff with Patrick next week, which will talk more about like the general approach to Photoshop that's not painterly. We were talking before our last one where he taught me Tyflow that he hates post and he doesn't feel like he has a good grasp on it. And even though I've been doing this stream now for like 30 some odd days, I haven't really done any like post-production because there's been so much like painting. I guess a little bit with the Bright Art Dark Times thing, but that was pretty painterly post. It wasn't like the type of post I tend to do on like a finished rendering. So we'll be going over that next week on, I believe, Monday. Don't hold me to it yet. As far as other workflows, I mean, it's weird because it's a hybrid of so many things. Like if you look at photographers that work heavy in post and their editing workflow, there is a lot to be learned as a CG artist, but there's also a lot of things that you have to do in 3D to make up for the fact that it's rendered to get it closer to photographic. And so I can't point you in one direction as far as how I work, because it's been pulled from so many different sources and inspirations, and a lot of the artists that I've had the pleasure to work underneath of. I learned a lot of like my photoshopping from people like Keith and Matthew and Martin at D-Box, along with some of the other artists there that I got to work with. And then people I've collaborated with over time. You just keep learning little things, and then you make it work for your workflow. That it's hard to say like, here is the A to Z method of how I like to work in Photoshop, because it changes with every single image. I'm rambling at this point, I can tell that. I'm trying to think of a better resource for you. Let me think about it a little bit, Nitin, but I'll be doing a little bit of more Photoshop next week. So hopefully that sparks it up, and I'll keep it on my radar of like, what can I think of that would be a good, what would I do if I was trying to teach my Photoshop method within an hour? And maybe I'll try and figure out a good way to teach that for one of these episodes. So good ideas, thank you. Okay, so that's all I got for today. I got a bunch of work to get done, so I can't stick around and start another one of these. Tomorrow is going to be Friday, so we're going to be doing some painting overs. We're going to be doing some paintovers, or we're going to be painting over some things. Good English, Mike. And I'm looking forward to that. It should be fun. I have a couple already lined up that I need to do, and I think I'm going to do it the same way that I did it last time, which is I got distracted because I saw Mike Kelly in the chat. I have a comment about that in a moment. I think I'm going to do it the same way I did it last week, which is I'm going to paint them tonight, and then we'll watch a time lapse. We'll talk about it a little bit and watch a short time lapse of the painting process. I felt like the end result of my paint over was better, as far as me being able to just kind of think clearly and just focus on what I was doing. So it was more efficient in that sense, even though it took more time overall, but I think it was giving better feedback. And then during the video, we get to just talk about my comments as opposed to me trying to do both. Mike Kelly, if he's who I'm thinking on, he has a lot of good information about architectural photography and techniques and methods. If he's who I'm thinking of, I'm going to do a quick Google to make sure that I'm not maligning him for no reason. He does some... let me see. Oh wait, this might not be the... no, it is the same guy. So he does a lot of stuff where he composites a lot of images together. So he'll take a flash and he'll light individual things, each with their own exposure, and then he'll paint them together so that we have like a very brightly lit actual piece of architecture that also the sky is exposed properly and everything else. And in most of his image, in my aesthetic estimation, overdoes that to the point where the sky and the building or the interior, he takes what could be a good architectural image to me, obviously this is all very subjective, and then pushes it like so far to like a bad rendering that like I get really kind of like almost upset by it. Here's like a perfect example. You can't take this picture. This looks like a not awesome rendering because it's been so photoshopped into something that would never exist in real life. some of them that I'm seeing here, like, oh no, that's him critiquing architectural renderings, which I do not think he has the position to do. This is another one, like these color temperatures between like this being this blue and this being this yellow, one of those would be more neutralized, right? But he did one exposure, adjusting everything for the background and the exterior, and then he did probably multiple exposures for the interior, and that looks like a bad rendering to me. But there's a lot of techniques that you can learn from, just apply them differently. Obviously, I've seen most of his stuff, at least the stuff that's free. So I'm not on here to bash people, and I kind of went down a little bit of a rant there. My apologies on that. Not my intention. I do think that you see those types of effects in a lot of renderings, and I think that it hurts their believability. And Luca, that's exactly right. Like, and that's, I think, the positive point is that you can learn from almost anybody, right? Like how that they work, how someone else works, even if the end result isn't what you're necessarily after. That doesn't mean they don't have techniques that you can adapt for your workflow and change the techniques, or take the actual technique and just apply it with a different aesthetic judgment, right? And that's one of the beautiful things about what we do, is that any of these techniques, whether it's painting, whether it's how you set up a rendering with lighting, how you do it with post, whether you actually just render out multiple scenes and clump them together, you can use those techniques to so many different ends. And the key is learn how someone else uses it, and then practice it in your own way to make it work for you, so that you like the way it looks. And, you know, that's all that you can really do. Okay. Guys, thank you for being here. As always, we're going to be back tomorrow. One other little note, since we have a little bit of time here, is that you guys can see, I actually can't see the title. We're 32 or 33 here. I kind of thought we'd be starting to peter out at this point. At least when I started, I thought like, okay, we'll probably be inside for a month and then things will be starting to get back to normal. Obviously, very quickly after I started doing these, that prediction seemed incredibly naive and foolish, and it looks like we're all inside for a while. And so I'm going to continue to do these for as long as I possibly can, and as long as this goes on. But I am going to start taking weekends off, so that I don't have to worry about them. I can do some prep for the week, so that I'm not trying to juggle this and client work as much as I currently am, and so that I have more time for the wife and the baby. So I am going to start taking weekends off starting this weekend, but tomorrow we're going to do paintovers, and then we'll be back on Monday with Patrick, and I'm very excited about it. And we have a couple other things that I'm trying to get figured out, which I'm also incredibly excited about. I cannot wait to tell you guys about it. So thank you for being here. Thank you for the comments. Hopefully I'll see you guys tomorrow. Until then, you know, tell someone you love them, and be well, and stay positive, and make something cool. Awkward time. I know it's coming. Here we go. Okay, one, and then cheers, folks. Be well.